Let's begin by creating a basic form. The form will take the user's name as input, and there will be an option to upload a file. In the settings, we've only allowed JPG and image files to be uploaded. Once the form is published, a link is generated which people can use to fill the form. Now, let's create a workflow based on this form using the human in the loop feature. In the Tiny Workflow section, we'll set up a trigger for when the form is submitted by the user. This will activate the workflow. For this, we'll use the form trigger and select the form that we've created. Once the form is submitted, the workflow will be triggered. Next, we'll add a human in the loop node. We'll keep the template type as approval. In the Configure section, you can customize this node to your needs. The Instructions section will contain the information about the user that you can review. It can list out the steps or actions that need to be performed, or the user data like their name, the image they've uploaded, etc. So we'll simply write, "Please approve or reject the request for this user." As you may know, we can map data from previous nodes into the next nodes. The data received from the swarm trigger will be mapped here. We'll map the user's name in this section. Following that, you can see that there's an option to select the content type. Let's set it to text for now. The summary content is editable by the reviewer. There's an option that allows reviewers to edit summary content. If selected, the reviewer who will either approve or reject the request can modify this content. For instance, we can add comments for rejection, which would allow the reviewer to provide feedback for improvement and resubmission of the form. Now, there's an option to add files, among other available options. Currently, we need to access the files submitted by the user in the form, so we'll select the option to add static or dynamic links. As you can see, different options are available. Given that users are uploading images, we'll set it to image. We need to input the link of the email here, which we'll get from the form response. In the form trigger response data, we can see a file upload response type, which is an array. Hovering over this reveals that it's an object where we get the URL as a key, which we need to map here. Since we have these functions and operations that we can perform on the data, we'll go to Array and search for getValueByPath, as we need to fetch the URL key from this JSON. So we select getValueByPath that will operate on this JSON or object. But before that, it's clear that this is an array. If multiple files are uploaded, we receive them in an array. Let's select the first object in the array. Hovering over this object allows us to check the values we need to map into it. We will then map the data from the file upload accordingly. We select the first object and extract the value for the URL key. This is how we map our URL. Once the URL is mapped, we save it. The image URL has been added and will now be visible on our approval or rejection screen. This section is now complete. Now let's move on to the next section, button configuration. Here we can configure buttons such as approve, reject, or even add custom buttons like block, pending, or in progress. This section is customizable to suit your needs. Next, we have the fallback behavior section. Fallback behavior allows us to select an action to be performed if a request is not approved or rejected within a certain time frame. For example, if a request is not reviewed within a day, we can choose to either approve or reject it automatically by enabling this feature. For now, we will disable it. We can also customize the human in the loop screen to match our brand logo and theme colors. Let's proceed to the next step. After saving this note, we can see two paths for the human in the loop process. The first is Notify Reviewer On, and the second is On Reviewer Response. Notify Reviewer On is triggered when a form is submitted and the human in the loop process begins. At this point, you will receive a link to open the human in the loop review screen. This is the stage where you select how you want to receive the link to review the user's data. In this case, we will choose to receive it via email. We select Gmail and send the email to get the link in our inbox. Once the connection is established, we fill in the necessary information. We label the request, Human in the Loop Request, and add a message. Hi, please perform the required action for this request. To personalize this for each user, we can include the user's name in the request. As you can see, the response from Human in the Loop includes several keys. From these, we get a URL. This URL leads to the review screen. We map this URL here and then click Continue to close the window. Once the request has been reviewed, the next step is to decide what action to take. This is the purpose of the on-trigger response path. At this point, there are two possible courses of action. Currently, we have configured the human in the loop system so that requests can either be approved or rejected. Now, we will add an if-else node. This node will be based on the status given in the loop response. The status tells us what action has been performed on the request, whether it has been approved or rejected. When we select status, we can choose either equals or contains. Let's select approve. If the request is approved, we will send an approval email to the user. To do this, we will add an email node that will be responsible for sending the email. On the other hand, if the request is rejected, we will send a rejection email to the user. We will add another email node for this purpose. Now, if the status is approved, let's send an email to the user stating that their request has been approved. We can personalize this by adding the user's name. If you would like to receive this email as well, you can add another email node. You can also add other nodes where you want to receive notifications or updates, or where you want the link for the human in the loop review to be sent. Currently, we are using Gmail, but you can configure this to send updates to Slack, WhatsApp, or any other integration. Finally, we will be sending an approval email to the user. If you want to receive this data as well, we can add another node that will send an email to you with the user's details and the status of their request, whether it has been approved or rejected. Let's make this subject unique by including the user's name here. Next, we'll select this option. We'll then add that the user's name has been approved. We'll then click Continue and Save. Now, let's set up the rejection path. The process for rejection mirrors the approval process. First, we send a rejection email to the user, then we receive the details. Let's see. We'll label this as Request Rejected. Hi. We'll insert the user's name here. Your request has been rejected. Now, let's add another component here. Similar to the summary section, we had added comments for rejection. If the reviewer edits and adds any comments to that section, and if we want to communicate that to the user, we can also receive the edited data as a response from the human in loop node. We can map that data here. We'll include the edited data in the email so the user can understand the reasons for the rejection, based on the reviewer's comments. We'll click Continue. Let's add another email node to receive this rejection status for our records. Okay, let's label this as Request for User and include the user's name to personalize it. The unique subject has been rejected. The user's request has been denied, with comments provided by the reviewer. Let's add the comments that were edited from the human in the loop's response. Let's proceed. Now that the entire flow is ready, let's save it and publish this flow. After publishing this flow, it will be triggered whenever a response is submitted on the form. Let's fill out this form once to check. I'll add some dummy file and submit the form. After submitting this form, I should receive an email for review. Let's check. Here it is. I've received a request to perform the required action for the user Zoya. I've also received this review link for this particular request. When I click on this link, as you can see, the review screen opens, and I can see the instructions that we provided in the Configure section of the Human in the Loop node. These instructions ask to approve or reject the user's request. The user's name is Zoya. This is the summary section that the reviewer can edit. If there are any comments to add, especially if I'm rejecting the user's request, I can go to Edit Content and write any comments there. The media file that the user has uploaded is also visible here. For now, let's preview this complete image here. Following this, we will approve the request. Upon approval, an email notification is sent out, confirming the approval of the request. For instance, a message stating, "Hi Zoya, your request has been approved," would be received. Additionally, a similar approval email would be sent to another account. However, if we decide to reject the request, the process is slightly different. Let's refill this form, using the same dummy file as before. This time, we will reject the request and add some comments to see what kind of email notification we receive. Once the form is submitted, a review link will be sent out. Upon opening this link, the uploaded file can be viewed. Now, let's add a comment, for example, upload a valid image. Save these changes and reject the request. As a result of the rejection, a notification email is sent out stating, "Hi Zoya, your request has been rejected." And the reason for rejection, upload a valid image. An additional email would be received, stating that the request for user Zoya has been rejected with the following comments by the reviewer. To sum up, this is how the complete human-in-the-loop process works. You can explore it further, add more buttons, perform custom actions, change these nodes to other integrations, and configure your own flow as per your requirements. Thank you.